The other thing that we're looking for through here is in terms of where the foot is landing. Now we've spoken before about overstride, and that's about where the foot is landing in relation to the centre of mass. And so we're going through to looking at the frame where we're getting that foot contact through here. And what we want to see in a really sort of, I guess, a really quick way to analyse that is looking at the shin angle. And we can see with Matt, actually, he's got a pretty good shin angle of pretty much bang on, sort of 89, 90 degrees through there. So we want to see a nice vertical shin. We can see with Matt, he does land more on his forefoot, and that doesn't matter so much. It's more about where the foot is landing in relation to the centre of mass. So we can see with Matt, he's got a nice vertical shin, which means that he's not landing too far distant from his centre of mass. If we were to see him landing a long way out in front through there, as you can see, that does start to put more demand on the hamstring through there, and potentially more compression, and especially when we combine that with a forward flexion angle as well, that can be contributing to issues up through there. The next thing that we want to be looking into is we want to be looking at anterior pelvic tilt. Now, this is going to be happening in the terminal stance phase. So what we see with these particular runners through here, and we mentioned before about the Jordan test when we were looking at the capacity assessment, and what we were looking for through there is looking at that knee extension angle and also the hip extension. If we're seeing a reduction in range, and we mentioned before, but if we didn't, we're looking for about 65 degrees total range we want between those. If we're seeing, especially if they've got a lack of hip extension, what's going to happen is they're going to compensate with anterior pelvic tilt, and that is then going to be putting more stress onto that forward hamstring. So we're going to be looking at that the anterior pelvic tilt. Now it can be hard to see on this, and you often need some IMUs to measure the amount of movement. But one of the tests that we can use, a line that we can use, is something that's called the kickback test. Okay, and what the kickback test is looking at is we're going to take two frames here. So we're going to be looking at when the foot is in that terminal stance. So we're looking at this is going to be looking at the left side through here. So we're looking at when that foot starts to come off the ground through there, which is going to be around through there, that frame. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use our angle measuring movement through here. We're going to have the vertex at the hip. We're going to put one line down through the thigh and another one that is perpendicular, parallel to the floor, and we can see there at that particular angle, that's 69 degrees. Then what we're going to do is we're then going to fast forward to when the foot is making first contact. So the opposite foot is making contact with the ground, which is around through there. And then we're going to take that measurement again. So we've got sort of 69 at that one. And then if we go for this one through here, so again, we're drawing a line through the shaft through there of the femur, and that's at 88 degrees there. So 88 plus 69, which my math, that works out to be 100, and this is where I use a calculator, 157, I think that works out to be. But that is a good amount. So we're looking at where we're seeing that being a problem is when we're seeing numbers closer to around 120, 130. So if we're seeing quite low numbers there, so we're adding those two scores together. I recommend doing this over two successful steps. So we're measuring one, and then we're going to measure another one, and then we do the same thing on the opposite side. So we're also repeating the same on the other side there, summing those together. And now if we're seeing numbers low down towards that 120, 130 range, it often indicates that they are really lagging behind, and it's what we call what's called backside mechanics, and they will tend to sort of lag that leg behind. That is often associated with overstride there as well too. So they'll often go from a really lazy leg recovery and then sort of going forward into an overstride. So Matt here has a good amount. He's got good backside mechanics, which means he is pulling his leg through and going into a good foot landing position through here. But that's something that we want to assess, which is a bit of a surrogate measure of that anterior pelvic tilt, what we call that the kickback test. The last thing we want to look for from a hamstring tendinopathy is looking at sort of pelvic position from the rear view. So we took some footage from behind through here, and what we want to be looking for through there is in mid stance, ensuring that there's no excessive pelvic drop through there. So we can see, looking through onto Matt's footage through here, he's actually quite good. So we can see that there is a small amount of drop, but anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees there is acceptable. But if we're seeing excessive pelvic drop there, it may indicate that, and we do often see that associated with overstriding. Interestingly, actually, with that pelvic drop, that it's not associated with strength. It's not necessarily a strength issue, it's a motor control issue, and that's something that we can work with gait retraining. So just to sort of rehash those things that we want to be looking for on the sagittal view: increased trunk flexion, overstride, then we're going to be looking at our kickback test, which is a surrogate for that anterior pelvic tilt, and then lastly looking from behind there with the increase in pelvic drop. And that pretty much covers off the running gait.